about Expo. Expo is a framework that I built an app with. So I'm just going to show you kind of how I did it a little bit now. How does my slideshow work? I did have some slide notes, but I forgot what they are, so I'm just going to have to wing it. Who am I? My name is CJ. I'm a learning technologist at Brighton and Sussex Medical School. I do print sort of like app work and video editing and make sort of like digital learning materials for the for the faculty, and that could be like 360 stuff or VR or web. So I designed an app for the head of anatomy. So at the anatomy department, we have a lab, and in the lab they have dissection, but they used to use paper and books. But one, it's not very healthy, and two, they wanted to move into a more digital realm so they could be more sustainable and save paper. So they came to me and said, CJ, what can you do? And I was like, well, I can build you a web page. That's what I started with. So I started and I built a web page with, in the beginning, I'm using JavaScript, and then I moved on to Expo. So in the beginning, I just used HTML and JavaScript, and I went to CodeBar, and they helped me a lot with my stuff. And they taught me things like, helped me with PHP and some Bootstrap and Flex. So that's why there's a little Flex diagram up there. And this was the first web page that I built. It's meant to be like a touch screen. So it was run in Safari, and it just had these little squares here because literally just to hit it with your thumb or finger and away you went. And that was fine, and that I started in 2016, and we used it for about 3 or 4 years, but it was messy. Using Safari on iPads in a closed environment isn't very secure, even though it had like a whitelist. I also have like a VMware what's it called? A manually managed system to work with the whitelist. So it was reasonably secure, but students were messing about with other apps. So I decided that we were going to build an app, and then COVID came along, and so I was like, we weren't delivering teaching inside the lab anymore. It's all external rather than internal, and this app was built for internal. So somehow we had to get the information to the students externally. So I thought, well, Expo is quite a good way. I found Expo, I don't know how, online, I think, and I had a go, and I quite liked it because I'm a bit of a slow coder, and Expo and JavaScript is great because it's open source. You can run it on Android, iOS, web. It's got libraries that come with it. You can see what you're doing. So you can write in one code base, and then you can see how things work. So I use that. Key features are it's got universal compatibility, built-in components, hot loading. I'm not sure what that means. I don't done that. Over-the-air apps, over-the-air updates, which you can do. I haven't done one yet, but it's quite good. Offline support it does, and there's lots of people in the community that use it. And so I liked it. So basically, this is sort of my code. It works with any code editor, but I use Visual Code because it's really easy. You can use, there's a barcode. So when you run the server, you can either use your phone on the barcode and look through it on your phone, or you can run a simulator. So I was going to do a talk about using the code editor and making some changes, but now we're using Google Slides. I made a screencast instead. So there's no commentary, so I'll just talk you through it. Let me know if you can see. I'll see if I can make it look, whoa, full screen. Can you see? Might be a bit blurry. So basically, you run your server and it opens a simulator. You can choose Expo Go to run it on, and then it starts up. I've made some little edits to make it faster, so you don't have to watch the whole thing loading up. It's meant to be landscape, so we'll turn it around for you. And then you just click on, I've just got one little navigation links, and I redesigned it so it's got better UI. All of these notes come from a database on the back end. I'm using Laravel to run it from, and basically you click on the link and you open a PDF on your iPad, and then the students can scroll through and do what they want to do. Don't worry, I'm not showing you anything scary. There won't be any gory body bits. So yeah, just a little demonstration about the kind of things that the students might use it for. Some are for courses, and some are, there's little resources there that they might want to have a look at. So session notes for different types of courses. And what else are we running? Oh, we're also running, oh yeah, I did a 360 walkthrough of the lab, and just a little demonstration on how that one works. And that's on the medical school website actually, so it's nothing gory coming up there, but I thought it was quite a good example of how 360 can work on an iPad. And then hang on a second. Oh yeah, one more little bit. Oh yes, and videos, but don't worry, we're not looking at any videos, but they can also look at videos as well. So during the pandemic, because we couldn't use the lab, we had to use videos. So basically, that's what happened. Now I need to figure out what's going on next. Okay, just a sec. I need to. Oh, no, it's starting again. Don't want that. Yes. Okay. Right. So let me just. Oh, we've got shakes. Oh no. Okay. Lastly, just how you get your build. So basically, it's an app. It goes in the App Store. You through Expo, the server, you create a build. This little window here just is it gets uploaded. The code gets uploaded to the Expo server. The Expo server compiles it, makes an app for you. You can either download it and transfer it yourself. In the old days, you used to have to download the build and use Transporter to get it onto the App Store. But now you can submit it straight away on the Expo site. So that's a little bit there where I submitted a couple. And there are my apps on the App Store. And that's me done. Oh, one more thing. Oh, yes, thank you. And there's a little blog here about who's using Expo. So I just thought I'd show you all the people that are using Expo right now. So the Expo people apparently are like loads of people using it. So I'm feeling quite righteous now. And yeah, that's me. And there's on this slide, there's a little link about an article about how Expo works in a more concise description. Thank you. Do you want to take questions, or do you want to just? Oh, I'm happy to. Yeah, happy to take questions. So.
Does anyone have any questions? Yeah, shoot.
Yes.
Firstly, that was an amazing achievement to do that. Like coming from a non-coding background to then be able to make an Expo app. Unbelievable, really good. A quick question: did you have any issues with approval on the iOS app? Because it's a medical app, so I was just quite interested if there was any hassle.
Because it's a medical app, it's licensed under an educational. Okay. So basically, when you go to the App Store, it's free.
Yeah. So
and because it's an educational app, it basically the App Store make you run it. We have to use Apple School Manager. Okay. So we purchase it in Apple School Manager, we download it, we put it on our MDM, and then we deploy it to all our iPads that way.
Oh, okay, thank you.
So yeah, no.
I'll have a chat with you about that. The
App Store is a bit of a tricky issue, but that took a while.
Brilliant. I thought we were going to see our first sort of live dissection.
No, I wouldn't do that to you. I mean, I can if you like.
No, bless you. Thank you, CJ. Yeah, just to expand on that chap's point, I have seen developers with decades of experience break down and weep and beg for mercy when trying to use React Native and Expo. So huge kudos. It is quite something.
Yeah, it has been a long journey. But it's working fine.
Yeah, incredible stuff. Thanks so much, CJ. Any other questions? Okay, let's move. Are you going to be about afterwards in case anyone's got anything? Brilliant. Cheers, CJ. Fantastic. On to James. So yeah, brilliant. Huge round of applause for James Hugman, who is one of our longest standing members. Let me just get your slides up, James. It's this one, right?
Yep.
On notes.
Yep. Great. So hello, I'm going to talk about the bigger code reviews. I thought it was quite cutting edge, but Ali completely cut my legs away from me earlier and said, oh yeah, everybody's doing it. So, so this is a bit of a war story about how I adopted bigger code reviews in my team. So just before we start, big O notation. Who's comfortable with big O notation? And who? Yeah, okay. Who's not? All right, good. Well, that's good for the next few slides then. So big O notation. It's this is the Wikipedia page, but I pulled out the quote which at the bottom, which is how an algorithm's runtime or space requirements grow as the input size grows. So it's a sort of relative measure. So just as an illustration, we've got two inputs here, a long array and a short array. Notice that the long array is 10 times the length of a short array. So this is just for illustration purposes. And we're going to talk about a number of functions. So this is the first function, which is the big O of n. Now you can see there's a loop in here, and this runs the same every time. And so we might be able to say that the long array running a function with what long array runs 10 times in the time of 10 times the short array. So we'd say that it scales with the n, which is the length of the array. Okay, does that make sense? Good. All right. So big O of n squared. So here we've got a nested loop, and they're going over the array. And you'd say that the runtime is a big O of n squared, and so where n is again the length of the array. And so and you would say that the big O of the runtime of the long array would be about 100 times the runtime of the short array. Okay, so n squared. So okay, and here's a simpler one, which is big O of 1, which is it's the same. It doesn't matter whether it's a long array or short array, and so you've got constant time. And here's a further example of m times n. So we've got another nested loop here, but this is the nouns, which is one of the inputs, and the verbs is another. And so this inner loop is going through every noun and verb combination. So it's m times n, where m is the number of nouns and n is the number of verbs. The letters don't really matter, but everybody happy with that concept? So how does that apply to code reviews? So I'm going to talk about the algorithm of landing code. It's a very general algorithm. So we're going to hack, and then we're going to put the code up for a review, and we're going to wait for the review. And you might say that the reviewers are just like you, they're engineers, so they're going to be busy. And also reviewers might be in different time zones, so you might have to wait a little while. And then the code finally reviewed, and then you decide whether the code is going to be reviewed. If it's not, you have to make changes, and you have to go and put the code back up to review, and you have to do all that thing again. And then finally you get to land the code, maybe after 1 or 2 loops around that loop. Okay, so I came across this, I don't know, in October. Ali came across it years ago. But so this was a blog post I read, and it was a sort of bit of a light bulb moment, because I'd already heard that you should make PRs as short as possible, and that always felt like I was having to code with my elbows in. But this really sort of struck the way I thought. I understood it, and it chimed with me. So this is big O of 1, so constant time. It's automated refactoring. So if you rename a class and it causes thousands of lines of code to be changed across hundreds of files, that's just you read the description and you review it and you go, yes, that's fine. You trust that the IDE did its work. Big O of n, where n is the number of lines of code. That's a sort of well scope. There's a single change that you're making. It could be 1,000 lines, it could be 10 lines, it could be 1 line. Fine. M times n. So that's you're doing many. That's m unrelated changes. And so each time you find a new unrelated change, you have to go back and reread the code. And so you end up doing O times m reading, trying to figure out what's going on. And then n factorial, everything everywhere all at once. Don't do this. Don't do this. Okay, so how does that make a difference? Well, in the optimized case, you will not review. The review doesn't take very long, and you could say, well, it's going to take 10 minutes, or it's going to take half an hour, whatever. But the code review is short and predictable, and so I don't know whether you've opened up a review and there's thousands of lines, and you just go, oh, I'm just going to do this in later on, and you don't come back to it until the next day or whatever. So your review time is short, and the waiting for a review is also short, because the reviewer can find many more 10-minute slots or half an hour slots than 2-hour slots or 3-hour slots in their day. And also you've got fewer times around that loop. So you end up you end up spending a lot less time waiting for a review and a lot less time getting reviewed. Okay, so I thought this was good. This was a good idea. So let's start this out. So I wanted to, I didn't want to adopt any new tooling. I didn't want to tell anybody that I was trying this. And I wasn't asking him for any permission. I wasn't asking for any process changes. I was just going to start this out on my own. So initial adaptations. So I got really good at Git rebase interactive, and that was sort of up my proficiency about that. Don't know whether anybody knows about that. Sort of, yeah, okay. So it's like rewriting the history of your branch. So I developed a habit of self-review. I'd always found this was a good idea, but this was particularly having that empathy of I'm optimizing this for the code reviewers. So to read my own code in a different context rather than just in the IDE or in the editor, I would actually do it in the PR interface itself. And so I could document surprising changes, not actually surprising bits of code, but surprising changes. So that didn't live in the comments of the code itself. And I found the empathy of with the reviewer meant that the descriptions that I was writing in the PRs became much more descriptive. I mean, you had no description and then sort of ended up with a template and then ended up writing a short description of what was going on. So, and then I'm going to talk about this a bit more, the one issue, many PRs. So, but that's a sort of natural effect of this approach. So here is a couple of examples. So I've got a description here, which is the relating to this bug. It's not fixing the bug, it's just relating to the bug. And then this is what I'm doing. Here's a big O of 1. And this is the change that I'm going to do. And look, this is the size of thing. And then we've got, it got reviewed and landed on the same day. So not a very big bug. But then this one was the last bug, which you can see there's 1,000 lines changed, and it got this much. And then here are the PRs which were related to this. Again, it's relating to this. And when did it get? It got comments on the 17th on the 21st. So that's 4 days. 3 days of those are the weekend. So that was a pretty fast turnaround with a team in Canada and me in the UK. So even after all of that, that was a pretty fast turnaround. So the primary consequences, my review time went down by about 75%. One colleague said, you've just landed a month's worth of work in a week. So that was pretty good. I landed a lot more code. My throughput was better, and the code was better reviewed. So landing thousands of lines of code, you end up with an LGTM. That was you end up with crappy reviews. And my team were much more aware of the code that I was writing. So the code was socialized a lot earlier. Secondary consequences. Well, the multiple unrelated changes attached to one story. That's a sort of way of saying, well, you can put other things in there that isn't related to the bug itself, the issue itself. So I've rather cryptically said requirement space and implementation space were changed. You sort of changed the result. And for that, I'm just going to talk about the Kanban board and the PRs, two different areas. And I don't know who works in a place where you've got one issue and one PR. One PR, one issue. Yeah, okay, yeah. It's not a hard and fast rule, but it's a sort of, that's the norm. It's a de facto rule, right? So break that, because what happens to your technical debt? On your Kanban board, you're going, well, I've got to put this, rename the FlibJIT, or I've got to refactor the FluBug, or whatever on the board, and the product owner doesn't care about that. The user doesn't care about that. So you can, rather than that, having one to N story to PR, you end up having smaller technical debt PRs. You get happier engineers because you're paying down, you're normalizing the paying down of technical debt. And the product owners are happy because they don't have the refactor the FluBug incomprehensible story on the board. So that's my story. Try it. Let me know how it works, and thank you very much.
Sorry to keep the little receiver there, just from sort of knocking. I think was that was what was yeah okay cool.
Sure.
But, yeah, brilliant.
Okay.
James, thank you so much. That was a fantastic talk. One of my favorite quotes is that the greatest mistake in communication is thinking that is taking place. I completely misunderstood what you were going to say, and so I like this is revolutionary, groundbreaking. It's wonderful. Thank you. I had no idea. I really didn't. Thank you. I have one comment and one question.
Mm-hmm.
One of the most important secondary consequences, I think, as well from all of this, is when you go back to look at that code, either yourself or someone else goes back to look at that code and that pull request later. Like, I don't know how many of you have that wonderful code lens thing where you can see who made a change on a line. Like, if you follow that story back to your GitHub pull request or your Bitbucket pull request or whatever it's called, then often you can get a lot more context about that. Now, it is a huge force multiplier if when you look back, the description is well written, is explained well, the sort of surprising changes like you mentioned are clarified. It's just like if everyone in every organization did that, then we would be talking about that 75% code, like that time reduction across the board. It's a tremendous thing. So yeah, I like all of those things that you said, like, absolutely incredibly valuable. My question is the universe's greatest spice merchant, David Heinemeier Henderson. Is that Hansen? Is that Henson? DHH. Yeah. Hansen was recently arguing. I think it was recently arguing that it's better to have really long-running, huge PRs if it means that a single cohesive feature lands, basically, like, because then it doesn't matter if it's 3,000 lines or whatever, like, you have all the context needed there to be able to review it correctly. So please, could I know your thoughts on Mr. Spicy's take?
Yeah, I'm a slow thinker, so I'm going to have to, I haven't had time to absorb that, and I don't know what the context is, so
Gotcha.
So my hot take is, yeah, I'm not giving you.
Yeah.
I don't know his reasons.
Bless your restraint. Bless your restraint. Okay, great stuff. Any other questions for James? Okay.
Thank you. It's really helpful. But I do have some kind of, I really like a Git rebase because of the rewrite history, and it's make the commit very clean. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, on the other side, sometimes I want to keep the history because I want to go, when I go back, I know how I find the solution. So that's something, some comment on Git rebase. Yeah. But I really like that. I mean, unfortunately, my other company, other team don't like it. So when I check the Git history, it's kind of like a merge from, staging something. It's a very too much noise. Yeah. Mm. Thank you very much. Yeah.
Yeah, I think, do you mind if I add a comment to that? Do you want to? Yeah. So I guess my comment on that would be that a rebase doesn't need to sort of completely destroy your whole process for getting there, if that makes sense. Like the idea, I think, for me, is to bring it down to a series of logical changes, and you can explain like what each one of those changes does and why. Even if it wasn't your first attempt, you can say like, I originally tried this and then ended up doing X, Y, or Z or whatever. So yeah, I mean, I never do that, but I think it's a nice idea. Did you want to add anything, James?
I don't know. I think having your commits tell a story is one thing, but I don't think they're I think they're still yours, and they're still part of your thinking process, until you start interacting with everybody else. And so it's okay to have messy thoughts and then tidy your thoughts, and then you can push them up to up for review. Does that make sense? Like we can get into the should you rebase versus merge and should you squash? All of that is for pub, I think. But I have vague opinions about most of those.
Yeah. One final note from me. After 12 years of being a Git CLI user, I recently used lazy Git for the first time, and it's incredible. I know all of you are thinking like it's fine. I'm happy on the command line, but you wait. You try lazy Git. I would have done a talk, but the creator Jesse Duffield has done a fantastic 5-7 minute introduction that is far better than I could ever do. So yeah, try lazy Git. That's my top tip. Brilliant. Huge round of applause for James. Thank you. Oh, sorry. One more.
It looked like you had a checklist in your PR template. I wondered if you thought they work well, or if people just tick them and pay no attention, or what you'd put in it, what you recommend putting in it.
I work with 3 or 4 different teams. They all have different checklists. The number of people who don't fill in those checklists, the number of PRs that I see that just haven't filled in the checklist. So I would say they're not quite useless. But they're easily ignored. So I don't know. I'm ambivalent to them. No strong feeling to do with that.
Brilliant. Thanks so much, James. Huge round of applause.
Hi everyone. I'm Jake. I'm one of the co-organizers of Async, and today, actually, before I get onto my talk, I have to say, sadly, Power had to drop out. But if you'd like to see what he would have been demoing, there is a comment on the meetup to link to his repo. Today I'm going to be talking to you about deploying your first app with Railway. And before I get too far into that, I felt like we needed to go over a bit of history. So in the beginning, there was Heroku. I mean, not like right in the beginning, but like before I started using Railway, I was using Heroku. A lot of people use Heroku as the platform that they first deploy their apps on because it was incredibly easy. It felt like you could kind of just throw any repository at it and it'd be able to deploy it. And on top of that, it had very reasonable plans, including a free plan. Sadly, not too long ago, Heroku binned their free plan, so I binned Heroku. And I went in search of an alternative that would be similarly easy to use. Tried a bunch of things, but by far the best in terms of ease of use and similarity to Heroku was Railway. And when I say similarity to Heroku, I mean literally by default, they have a Heroku build pack. So if your thing built on Heroku, it will build on Railway. And they had some very good, reasonably priced plans. There was like a free plan, which is sort of like almost like a free trial, to be fair, because you're probably going to go over that quite easily. But even their usage-based plan gave you the first $10 free. Ironically, after I started using Railway, they also binned their free plan, but that doesn't matter because their new plans are still very reasonable. I'm just on the hobby plan, which is, it's slightly confusing the way this is set up because it says $5 a month, but you get $5 of usage free. So there are months where you don't pay anything. So I figured I'd include my actual bank statement there to give you an idea. So I've got 5 or 6 apps running on there, 3 of which have multiple services, 3 of which have multiple environments, like a development and a production environment. So that's about, I've probably got like 10 to 12 individual things, instances running. I should point out that none of which are particularly popular and some are rarely used, like the Ask the Brains app, which we will be using next month. But yeah, as you can see from my statement there, the larger numbers are the rounded up to pounds, and the smaller numbers, which you can probably barely see, are dollars. But to give you an idea, the last 2 months cost me like $1.50 And then there's a big gap all the way back to June 2023 where I didn't pay anything. And then they were about $5 for running that many things, which is far more reasonable than Heroku's new pricing, which would have cost me in excess of like 40 or 50 quid a month. Yeah. Right, so next up I have, all right, I've got to show you the code for the demo before I do the demo. First things first, nvmrc to define the node version, but you could also specify this in your engines field in your package.json, as you may have done before with Heroku. We've got some dependencies on Express to run a little server, PG, which is the node adapter for Postgres to talk to a database, and TypeScript, just so I could demonstrate that it can also build stuff before it runs. So, but you could just do this with JavaScript. And then we've got some types of stuff, ignore that. Scripts, two scripts. One is a build script that runs the TypeScript compiler to build our TypeScript into JavaScript. And then it also runs our migrate.js, which we'll see in a second. And then we have a start script, which runs our main index.js, the built version of the TypeScript. tsconfig does stuff. Tells TypeScript how to build stuff. We don't need to go over that. Here is our migrate.ts. It uses the database URL. I should probably use a little pointer thing. Is this it? Yeah, no, database URL comes from the process, from the environment variable. If it doesn't exist, we're going to throw an error. If it does, we're going to connect to our database using the database URL. And then this stuff down here that was generated by Copilot, because I'm lazy, creates a table called counter with a count of 0 if it doesn't already exist. And then our index.js code has, I've ignored the like boilerplate stuff about, again, starting a Postgres client and spinning up an Express server, etc. There is a function that I've called create.html, which returns a little bit of HTML with a count injected into the first paragraph. That also returns a button of type submit that says increment, and that's all wrapped up in a form with method post. And then we have two routes in our Express app. First is a get, which gets our count from our counter table and just creates that HTML with the count in it. And the other one is a post, which increments the count by 1, and then again returns the new HTML with the new count in it. And here is where I would have otherwise done a live demo, but thank God I pre-recorded this. I also did it. I thought we were going to have a very little amount of time, but since we only have a few talks, I could have stretched this out a bit. This is going to go very fast, and I'm going to have to speak very quickly. Right, so first of all, I'm already logged in. We go to the dashboard. We hit new project. I'm going to select deploy from GitHub and search for a repo. In this case, it's the Async Railway demo. And hit deploy now. Now, this is going to fail the first time around because remember, our migrations relied on database URL, which we haven't defined yet. Whew, where do I go next? Right, we need to generate a domain for this thing to be deployed on. By default, it's named after the GitHub repo and the environment they're in, which is production. But since we don't have a development environment, I delete the production part. Whew. What happens next? Oh, and then it's generated a name for our project. So we're going to change that from simplistic balance to async railway demo. So we remember what this is when we go and look back at it. And now we can go and add a database. So we add new service, select database, add Postgres, and that's going to start spinning up a little Postgres database while that's deploying. Whew. Pop back into the build logs for the last build just to demonstrate that we can see the error that we threw from our migrate.ts. And now that Postgres database is already deployed. So we can go and add a variable reference. These are variables that are provided by the Postgres service. So you can share variables between the two. And we hit deploy again. And I thought this was faster. Everything has been fast until that point. Now we can see that it's deploying again. We've got a database URL that is just referencing the one from our Postgres service. And this is going to go through, run the TypeScript compiler, build a thing, run the migrations, and that built in just over 12 seconds. And then there's a little bit of extra time for it to go and actually deploy the thing. We can click on the link, and it didn't work immediately, so reload the page, and there's our thing. And when we click increment, our count increments. If we open this in a new tab, you'll see that that is indeed coming from the database as opposed to being done on the client. And that is it, I think. Yeah, that's how easy it is. Wasn't that fast? Yeah. And then can't go to the next slide. Let's just do that manually. Oh, no, it's playing again. How do you get out of this? There we go. Thank you. Right. If you'd like to look at this presentation again, view the repo or the live demo if you want to go and click a button that increments a number. Those are the things. Take a photo now. Thank you. Questions, etc.
Very cool. I'm glad that you didn't pass out from lack of oxygen for that, Jake. Does anyone have any questions for Jake? Wow. Okay. I don't know who was first.
I don't have a question. I just wanted to add something. I've used Railway a bit. The thing I like about it, so the main reason why it's so cheap is because you only pay for the RAM and CPU usage. Well, actually some other stuff now, but
Yes.
so if it's just sitting there doing nothing, you're not paying for the CPU. It's not using anything. So that's
Yeah,
pretty cool.
and it also probably prompts you to go and improve the performance of your thing as well.
it convinced me to switch to Go for some things because it uses much less memory than Node for quite a lot of things. I also, if you have an old enough account, you can still get the, I get it for free, which is quite nice as well.
Oh, really?
I think they kept it around for some people. Don't tell them.
You are far too young to be grandfathered into anything. I'm impressed. Sorry, no.
Is the $5 a month limit a hard cap, or is it unleashed onto your bank account?
You know what? I don't know. I receive an email every month that I go over the $5 free that says, warning, you've used over your limit. And then it's like, it's $1 more. And I'm like, oh, okay, thanks for the warning. But I suppose it could suddenly be a ridiculous amount. I don't. I'd hope you put, again, some sort of DDoS protection in there.
Yeah, it's a good point. It's a good point.
Yeah, no, that was a really great talk. Thank you. So I'm very new to the scene, obviously. I mean, I've used Railway for one app. So I'm still obviously quite new to Railway itself. I've really enjoyed using it as opposed to, I suppose, other deployment services I have used as well. I find it really easy to use and everything, and I think you probably touched on that as well. My question would be, obviously, as someone who's used it for quite a few more apps than I have, does it leave anything to be desired at all? Like on the flip side, have you found any sort of challenges with it as you use it more? Or?
It was a little bit limited before they recently changed the way their databases are structured. So you'll notice when I spun up the Postgres database, it had two services that overlapped. So there's one that runs the database server and one that is your data. And previously they came coupled, and you couldn't, if you wanted to add another database, you basically had to also spin up a new database server at the same time. There was no way to just switch which database you were using. It is lacking a few things that Heroku has, like some of the scaling options and also automatic database backups. So you've got to write yourself a little script that does it yourself, which isn't a huge amount of work, but yeah, it's not missing much. Cool. There's not much left to be decided.
Brilliant, yeah. Thank you.
Who else had a question? Right at the back there. Sorry, bear with me.
Yeah, just two questions. One is that does it have in Heroku speak dynos that sleep, or does it stay active? As in, if I hit it, it's going to respond straight away.
Yeah, so actually that's one of the, I didn't mention, but one of the reasons that I really liked Railway was that even on their free plan, I don't think they went to sleep.
Right.
And definitely if you're on a hobby plan, they never sleep. Okay. So yeah.
And the other thing is have you tried fly.io? And if so, what did you think of that?
Yes, I have.
Because that's free.
I
not for very long, maybe. But.
Yeah, that was one of the alternatives that I tried out, and I couldn't even get a single one of my apps to deploy on it. So I gave up pretty early. I was like, I've spent 5 hours staring at this, trying to get one thing to deploy. That's too long for me. Whereas Railway was, almost as fast as that the first time I tried it. So
yeah, there's a lot of love for Fly.io out there, but I also had a little bit of trouble deploying an app on it. But yeah, Railway looks fantastic. So yeah, any other questions? Yeah, Jan.
Just to follow up, there are hard caps, which is pretty cool. I don't know how they do it, considering they use the infrastructure everybody else does, but they do enforce hard caps.
Sweet. So what was your term? It's not going to rinse your bank account, is that? Yeah, unleash on the bank account. Okay, yeah, brilliant. Does anyone else have a question? No. Huge thanks so much, Jake. Fantastic. Are you good coming up?
Hey, yeah, so I'm Niall. I will be showcasing the power of length in TypeScript. Now, this is also only to do with the types and not any sort of runtime JavaScript. It's kind of just like a nicety that you can do in TypeScript. And I also, quick disclaimer, I also don't know if any of this will get you fired. It can lead to quite sort of cursed types, and yeah, you'll see it at the end. I'm going to start things off though with some quick questions. Do people know what the type of the length type is in this instance? And I'll just answer it straight away. Yes, but it is a number, which is as expected, right? But then what about this one? Now here, this is a little bit different. In TypeScript, this would be a tuple, which has a defined amount of items. And so we already know how many items are in this tuple. And so hence, we know it's 5. And so then we can get into this example as well, where we've got an A type, which has 3 items in it. And then we've also got the length type, which is splitting it into a new tuple, and then also adding another element to that tuple. And so that is 4. So closer inspection, what does this actually mean? So we've got a type, which is a tuple. We are splitting it, and then we're adding another element to the tuple. So we're incrementing the length by 1. And so this can let you do some pretty funky things. So like this, where you can have a number where you're like, I want 3 items in this array with a certain type, and then it will give you that as the type. Line by line as well, the way it works is, firstly, it will go on line 5. The lines above there are just the actual the generics and the actual type. But internally, in this recursive type, there is an internal tuple which is being managed every iteration of the recursion, or every recursion. And so at the start, it gets initialized to 0 length, and then it will be checked. So if the length, or if the desired length that you are giving it is equal to the internal array length, then that's fine. That's the type. But then if not, then add 1 and then do the whole thing again. And so this can also get sort of a bit nuts in certain cases. And so basically, I've had my VS Code completely freeze when doing an inspection on a type. And that's because it will just continuously add 1 each time until it tries to satisfy something which it will never do. And so that is why I've had to also do a recursion limit. And so this is just an arbitrary sort of number, whichever you're kind of like, you think works. And so I just like figured, 501, that's a big number. That's probably more than anything that I will ever need. But then you just wait as well. So that's that. So now we can create a recursive type with a counter. So it starts from 0, 1, 2, 3. That goes up to a limit. So we've got a bounded iteration all of a sudden. And then we've also got the ability to add 1 to the length of the tuple, only though. However, Jake has stepped in, and now we've got an add type. So you can add 2 numbers together. Now this is all type checked as well. 11 can only be the value of this of n in this case. There's no other numbers accepted or any other sort of types. And then there we go. So we can do a bit of Fibonacci. So just doing a bit of like addition of the previous and then the the next previous, and then just returning the nth sort of number in the Fibonacci sequence. But we don't have to stop there. We can do it with strings. So now there is a string repeat. So you can do, basically as many strings as you want. And again, this is all type checked. You can only have async.js repeated 4 times. That's the only thing that is accepted. But you've seen this slide before. but now it's it. And yeah, I do have a bit of like a live sort of demo stuff going on as well, if there is time. But yeah, if there is any questions so far, feel free. Yeah.
Should we take questions, or should we just see what madness Jake has done with the vector class first? Should we do that? Yeah. Let's just go so straight. Sorry, no, go straight into that first, if that's okay. No
worries. Okay, so these are all. So this file here. Okay, I'm in there. Okay. There we go. So these are the types that I showcased in the talk. And again, so my array in this case, you can see the actual type of it. That's 3 strings in a row. And again, this is bounded fixed length. And again, for the n in this case as well, it can only be 11. And Fibonacci, for some reason, it has a red underline, but it still works. And I have no idea why. But yeah, again, if I'm like 11, that will complain, but it will be 89. And again, yeah, you can keep on going. This will be async.js 4 times. And yeah, but then this is the reason why I got into any of this as well. So I was making a vector class, which I wanted to be as feature complete as I could. So I've got vector A, I've got vector B, vector C. Now you also may know, or may sort of notice, that the vector 2 or vector 3 as well. And I'm not actually specifying 3 or 2 there. It's being inferred by the number of arguments that I'm passing the create function. And so I can do some pretty cool things with like vector A, for example. Some of you may know in vectors, you can only do a cross product on a vector or 2 vectors of length 3, or I think 7 is also the other one. Yeah, so I've also implemented that, where I can do vector A dot cross product vector B, and that's being sort of printed out right there. However, because I've got a vector 2 there, I can do vector, oh no, that's not the thing to do. But that will then complain because it's not a vector 3. And then also one last thing, there's so my vector C, oh, that's not got as many brackets. That should be complaining. Maybe it will now. Okay. I tested on my machine. But yeah, no, that would normally complain because as the Z component in a vector 2 does not exist. And so, yeah, it should be a red squiggly, but we'll just imagine it for now. Yeah.
Fantastic. Thanks very much. Okay. Well, just before I open it up to questions for Jake, for Niall, this Freudian slip, this because you started all of this.
I'll
take
take it as a compliment.
Yeah, I do.
honestly.
Please do take it as a huge compliment. I should note that I've been a professional software engineer for 15 years, and I still feel very dumb after a talk like that. So kudos, that is some wild stuff that you've been up to there. Also, I'm slightly worried that you started with Fibonacci sequences, but now the reason that you didn't get that error is because your TypeScript system has become autonomous.
I
And
mean, even I loaded the same page at home on my own laptop, and it should be like the same everywhere. But
yeah,
apparently not.
no, you've invented artificial general intelligence with TypeScript. I mean, kudos. Okay, fantastic. Questions, anyone? James.
I have no intelligent question to ask. I'm just.
That's okay.
The Fibonacci sequence, you changed from 10 to 11, and it gave you an error.
Yeah.
That 89 was the only valid. So
yes.
And that was available in the tooltip, but was that available anywhere or somehow in the runtime?
So this is only like in the in types basically, and this was kind of just a rabbit hole that I was just going down.
I mean this is abusing types for computation, right? Yeah. So I'm interested in, could you abuse it further and get it available at runtime?
I mean, aside from making the Fibonacci sequence in code, I don't really think so. Like, what kind of runtime are you sort of thinking? Are you
right now? You've got it in the runtime of the editor.
Yeah. No. So that's the TypeScript compiler being complaining basically.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. So at runtime of the program,
it's all wiped away. It doesn't have any knowledge.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Okay.
Go for it.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that there are runtime environments that use the TypeScript system for like marshalling arguments, like between server and client, for example. So they use the types like Zod, I think, does that, and they like generate runtime verification of like data you get in. It's like, oh, is that the right type? Because I got it from some server. So that would be like a place where you'd use it in runtime. Well, you could have the Fibonacci 11, and that would generate something that in runtime verifies data from somewhere else, like that. Well, in this case, I guess the client would have a Fibonacci 11, and the server would have a 55, and you would be able to verify if they match. Like that's what the runtime would do.
Nice. Is TRPC also something similar to Zod?
It's like a world of pain.
Okay. There we go. And anyone fancies doing a talk on that? That'd be great. Great stuff. Is that it for questions? Oh no, Jake's got one. Of course, Jake's got one.
I was just wondering if you could dive into a bit more detail on how the fixed length array type works.
I can do an example.
Sure.
I'll just go back to the actual definition. Okay, I'll use this one. Okay, so it starts off initializing the internal array, or internal tuple, I guess, as a tuple of length 0. And then on line 15 in this example, line 15, it compares the current length of the internal tuple to the desired length, so whatever you want it to be. I guess it's doing the recursion limit stuff first, but ignore that. And so if n extends a length, then we've met the desired length. And so then it will get out of the recursion, return the internal array, internal tuple even. and then we've satisfied our condition. But if not, then it will go into the bounded fix, or the last case of the ternary, and give the same type, give the same desired length, but then add one element even to the internal tuple. And so the next time round, in the next like recursion sort of step, now it's an internal tuple of length 1, and then it's going through the same steps, so it's not equal to the length of the desired length yet. So we'll add another element, and so now it's length 2, and then 3, and so on and so forth, until we hit that desired length. And once we have hit that desired length, and then we get out of the recursion, and then that's our tuple.
Nice. Thanks very much. Jan.
I think you just successfully executed on the runtime of every brain in this room.
Nice.
Exactly. I'm just trying to figure out a use case where I can actually make use of Fibonacci types. I'm sure there's one somewhere. Great. I think that's it. Fantastic. Thanks so much, Niall.
Yeah.
Great stuff.